Hi, my name is Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss Boris Johnson's latest massive failure of policy over the coronavirus pandemic and how what might look like a largely reasonable roadmap will almost certainly blow up in our faces as well. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So we're starting off the week with reports that officials are trying to track down someone who has gone missing after testing positive for the so-called Brazilian variant that is not only more transmissible but has some resistance to the vaccine. In other words, thanks to the fact that we still don't quarantine people entering the country properly, when we know that that is one of the central pillars of action against a pandemic, and thanks to our piss poor decision to give the job of tracing people to private bubbleheads, we now have a nationwide hunt on our hands. And it's complete deja vu. A year ago we were doing the same thing, trying to hunt down people who'd brought the virus into the country in order to try and stamp it out. That was before Boris Johnson told us to take it on the chin and then promptly nearly died because of his own stupidity. And here we are a year later and we still haven't learned. We're still incapable of actually tracking down people for whom we're supposed to have contact details because they've been tested and we've recorded that they've been tested, and in the middle of a national lockdown as well. Boris Johnson is trying his best, my arse. Not that I ever argue against that, by the way. Worthless argument, not interested. Let's accept it. Let us accept that he's actually trying his best. This is his best. If this is the best that the Prime Minister can do, we desperately need a new one. But when Boris Johnson revealed his roadmap last week, there was much that independent experts approved of. This was mainly the notion that layers of restrictions were going to be removed in broadly the right priorities, emphasising outdoor activities first, where of course the risk is much, much lower. And there was a promise that although there were dates with each phase, that the decision would be based on the data, not the dates. I'll be honest, I don't believe the Prime Minister. But the only way to tell whether he's telling the truth or not is to see what happens when a key date arrives and the data doesn't support his proceeding according to plan. Because make no mistake, everyone is behaving as if the lockdown is being eased according to a set of dates that nobody thinks the government will interfere with. This means that there will be almost completely open country again on June the 21st. The government seem to be pinning their hopes on a combination of vaccinations and the warmer weather reducing indoor transmission, because transmission is a much greater risk indoors. We've had a recent spell of warmer weather. It's a little bit nippy today, but it has been warm for the past few days. And as a result, I've seen much more blatant breaking of the rules. I even saw a full-blown children's party in the front garden of someone's house, right in view of anyone who might be passing, which included me. There have also been evening garden parties going on as we've walked the dogs. Non-compliance is on the increase as the weather gets warmer. However, although it's still not acceptable, if the interactions are outdoors, the risk is lower. Where the risk is still very high is, I don't know, let's think, oh yes, schools. Now, with all students back, apart from those having to isolate or actually being ill, we're returning back to a situation where millions of people are going to be indoors for long periods of time in poorly ventilated environments and where mask usage is at least recommended but still not mandated. Now, that's better than before. Because it wasn't even recommended in classrooms before, although individual schools and colleges sometimes made the decision to enforce it anyway, but that was not largely the case. Now, if that recommendation from the government translates into actual wider use of face masks in the classroom, it's possible that this reopening of schools won't be the same immediate disaster that it was last September, where it powered the second wave. However, experts are in agreement that schools have not yet been made safe. The newer variants flying around find it much easier to transmit between younger people who seemed naturally more resistant to the original form, and so the data is not going to look as brilliant on March the 29th as people imagine it's going to at this point. The rate of decline in the number of new cases per day has already started to slow down. We're a long way off getting down to 1,000 new cases per day. It's currently on 9,000. In addition, the number of hospitalisations is still at the same level as at the peak during the first wave, when it was considered far too much of a threat to the NHS to ease up on restrictions. And that was later in the year when the weather was warmer. And yet this is exactly what we're doing now. When schools reopened in September, the number of new cases per day trebled over the first 3 weeks. I use a 3-week period because that's what the government are doing. They say we should wait for 3 weeks to see the impact of a particular phase of scaling back restrictions to allow 1 week for transmission and 2 further weeks to see the impact on, say, hospitalisations and new cases, which seems fair. Now, I'm not expecting the number of new cases to treble this time round for a number of reasons. One, the number of new cases per day is already very high, double the peak during the first wave, in fact, and more than double what it was when the experts called for the second lockdown. 2, if there is a more widespread use of masks in schools, which we don't yet know because the rules haven't changed, but at least the guidance has, then that will help blunt the rate of transmission as well, inevitably. And 3, although the mass testing that's supposed to be happening in schools isn't happening as described by the government, it will still help a little surely in suppressing the chance of transmission. Oh, also I suppose 4, as the weather does get warmer, it will be easier to ventilate some classrooms, helping avoid the same disaster as last time. But against that, I look at the data and I see figures for new cases, hospitalisations and deaths that exceed those of the first wave and lockdown, and then see that we're putting millions of people into close proximity for hours at a time without the very simple precautions that experts have called for, like mandatory mask wearing and air purifiers. You know, and remember, this isn't about whether we open schools or not, it's about can we open schools safely? That doesn't seem to be on the table. Then what we're doing with all these people that have spent all day congregating in poorly ventilated areas, we're sending them home to their families, some of whom are being told to shield as vulnerable adults, which makes a bit of a mockery of the shielding. We also have newspapers giving people a false sense of security about the situation now. So on Sunday, the Mail, for example, said writ large, in a special colour even, that even a single jab gave 90% protection. This is a lie. It's a lie that becomes even more obvious when you read the article attached to the headline, where they basically make out that protection means something completely different. But the distinction might evade you unless you understood terms related to vaccinations like protection. It's a technical term which has been misused shamelessly by a paper that never wanted the restrictions in the first place and has consistently encouraged people to adopt a false sense of security and ignore the rules. So all things considered, I'm not seeing a lot different to last year. We have a government that are not implementing the sort of policies that have been shown to work around the world and have been advised by their own experts. We have a media and Conservative Party working against even the piss-poor efforts that Boris Johnson is making in order to avoid killing another 120,000 of us. And we have incoming warmer weather that may give us a false sense of security along with the vaccine that means we store ourselves up for a world of trouble for the coming autumn after this summer's behaviour. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.